Well, a very good evening, live from the Standard Group headquarters. This is Kivumbi 2022, and tonight we dig deeper into the topic of the voters register. Now, tonight the numbers are in, and it's official. Some 22,120,458 voters will be eligible to vote in the forthcoming general election. Now, the cleaned up IEBC register is out, and it also shows 10,000 voters from the diaspora will cast their ballot, while some 7,000 prisoners will be able to make that crucial choice on the 9th. In an election that every vote counts, if a candidate has to meet one of the key criteria in this election for president, that is 50% plus one, nothing has been left to chance. But then this released data has unanswered questions, some of them now under scrutiny and under probe. How did illegal voters, for example, that transfer, how did it occur? And what happened to those voters who were illegally transferred? Now, the Kenya Kwanza candidate is crying foul and want these investigations expedited. But that is not the only issue with the electoral body. We ask, have they met the timeline strictly? Are they prepared for this election, which is in less than 49 days? Now, tonight we open their books of audit and audit their preparedness. I speak to Willis Otieno, an advocate and election expert, and also running mate for Jimmy Wanjigi, the Safina presidential aspirant. We also engage Joy Mdivo, an advocate and a political commentator, and finally Joshua Kipto, outgoing speaker, Nandi County Assembly, and he's also an advocate. Look out for our news headlines at 8:30 p.m. and of course the top stories at the top of the hour. I will be back at 9. This is Kivumbi 2022 at Ken Mijunga across all social media platforms. Over to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Ken. Good evening. My name is Eric Latif. Kivumbi 2022 begins now, and I've got two guests in the studio to look at that voters register representing the two main presidential campaigns. From the Azimio corner, Saitabao Ole Kanchori is the chief agent for Raila Odinga, and from Kenya Kwanza is Kipchumba Karori, advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Eric.
Let me just go through the numbers as Ken has just given us. So the final register, IEBC says those who are eligible to participate in this year's general election, 22,120,458, with 49% of those being women and 50.88% being men. Those between the ages of 18 and 34, 39% of the voters, and this is a significant drop by 5.27% from the number of youth who were registered as voters in 2017. The number of female youth has also declined by 7.75%. The number of male youth has declined by 2.89%. And if you look at the total number of people who are bearing IDs in the country versus those who have registered as voters, it's a 74% voter registration of those who are eligible with IDs. So looking at all these numbers and also looking at the number of polling stations, very many things to look at indoors and what the numbers mean. However, let's begin with the concerns that had been raised before, even as we run up into this particular moment when KPMG released its audit to the IEBC and the concerns that had been raised by the campaigns. One of those is with regards to some 1 million or so voters who had gone missing, and this came from the Kenya Kwanza side. What explanation has been given by the IEBC to that, and what action has been taken?
They have tried to break down, when you read the report, there has been a breakdown of what has been done to each and every category, where the issue of the voters, where we had flagged. And actually, it is not Kenya Kwanza that flagged it. It began with the chairman of the IEBC. We were just echoing because we realized most of the 1.1 million voters were mostly people from our strongholds or from places where we have a huge following. So, and when we go through the report at the macro level, the KPMG and the IEBC have tried to explain what has been done. But now that we have the report, we will be going granular from tomorrow. In our next meeting, we'll go back with answers asking, we want the specifics, because a vote is tied to a polling station. If you tell us this and this has been done, we counter-check with the polling station to say, has it been effected? And that's why that one goes neck to neck with the issue of a manual voter register, because you need it to counter-check at the polling station level. For example, the KPMG report has flagged over a few abnormal transfers. Are those the reason why these 1.1 million votes were moving anywhere on the table? But we have seen the breakdown of whatever we had an issue with, but there are still remaining some numbers. So that is what we want to go granular on.
It sounds like you are somewhat satisfied with the explanation that has been given by the IEBC so far. You just want to verify that what they're saying they've done, they've actually done.
You know, Latif, when we deal with IEBC, we do not deal with IEBC to find them at fault. We deal with IEBC to help them because we are Kenyans. And the success of IEBC, as I've always said in this table, is our collective success. So we deal with them, we write letters to them. Number one, not seeking favors. We just want to make sure that everybody will be subjected to an election as per Article 88 and as per the ruling of the NASA 2017 case. That is all we want, because we do not want to go to a process where the end result will be questionable. And as Maraga told us, election is a process. So when we are this process, we flag off any issue as it arises. We have our issues. We will shortly go back to the commission. We will raise them through the normal channels, and that is how we have been dealing with these issues, because we still have issues. Even with the report, there are issues we are not satisfied with, and we will use the right channels.
You know, in the issue of the exceptions generated from the register of voters, there was an issue of, for example, ID and passport references that match the National Registration Bureau but don't match the Department for Immigration Services, but names recorded in the register of voters. Things that have happened and explanations that have been done, have been offered. 24% of the 226,000 voters had been acted upon and deactivated because the majority require verification by the registration officers. The use of biometric identification during election will mitigate the risk of illegitimate voters to vote. Issues have been raised. This is how they're being addressed. Saitabao, do you feel that what IEBC is saying is addressing the concerns that have actually come out in public?
Well, thank you very much, Eric. I think I want to begin by agreeing with my brother Kipchumba that all of us have a responsibility as stakeholders in this election, and indeed even as Kenyans generally, to ensure that we cooperate with IEBC to help them in whichever way we can from where we are seated to deliver a credible election. Having said that, of course, the responsibility to do that is ultimately that of the IEBC. And even as we want to offer them all the cooperation that we can, and where we see issues, it is our responsibility to raise them, you know, as participants, as stakeholders, and even as Kenyans, because it is our election. It is our process. It is the election of various of our leaders that we hold dear, and it is the future of this country that is at stake. So it's not an IEBC exercise that we can say do it whichever way you want. Even having said that, right? There are things that we feel perhaps IEBC needs to address a little better. When you asked Kipchumba about the 1 million votes. I think the fundamental questions which needed to be answered even at the point of entry of that question. The fundamental question that needed to be answered was, how did Kipchumba's candidate know that 1 million voters were missing from the register before the register was made public and the KPMG report had not yet been made public? That question needed to be answered.
Unless he was also an auditor.
Unless he was he was involved in the creation of the missing, or in the process of creating the missing, or in any other way. He must have had one foot in for him to know, or one eye in. So that question has not been answered, whether by Kipchumba, his candidate, or IEBC. It needed to be answered, because that question goes into the integrity of that register. So if I can get in and know what's going on, okay, if first of all, let's begin even from the beginning.
Kipchumba says that the issue was first raised by the chairman of the IEBC. Did I get
which is the position on record to date. If you can just go to your archives, It is Chebukati who first of all flagged off the problem, and he said he's investigating some people. Then from there, that is when our candidate picked it. And you know, Eric Latif, his candidate's brother, Aburu Odinga, has been on record saying this time we are not losing the election because we have a system. Secondly, Eric, our candidate has committed that he will not go to the streets with stones. He will concede defeat if he is defeated. Up to this moment, Raila Odinga has not.
That is not the issue.
What we are saying is this,
Kipchumba, that's not the issue on the table.
What we are, it builds up to that issue.
Did your candidate know about the 1.2 million votes
he knew it
after Chebukati said it?
Yes.
Or is it that Chebukati said there are some issues, and then your candidate came up with the details?
No,
yes,
he retorted about that.
You took away my point. Midstream, I was still making my submissions, and really, it is not true that it is the chairman of IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, who talked about 1.1 million or 1.2. He talked about the concerns that were raised by KPMG. He did not go into the details, and Kipchumba's candidate picked it up in a very serious forum. You know, he was addressing observers and diplomats and foreign missions and telling them how, you know, he knows. And he even knew that out of the 1.2 million, 800,000 were his supporters. You know, and a register is a very private document because voting is required to be by secret ballot. You are not even supposed to know just by looking at the document that these are my supporters. Because then you can decide, you know, to profile these voters. So it is not even, it is a bit worrying, but let's not get into that. The important thing is this. The integrity of the register, IEBC has not assured us. To the satisfaction, even the guys who are complaining are still complaining. Yeah, the guys who are saying they had an issue with it and they knew that something has been done, they are still not satisfied. We are not satisfied. Nobody seems to be satisfied. And IEBC needed to tell us how, if indeed 1.1 million votes they went missing, how they went missing, first of all. Yeah, they needed to tell us that. It's basic information. How did it happen? How do you prevent it from happening again, if indeed it happened? And you know, now they've told us they've restored. You know, today in the briefing they say they've restored. So in the restoration, how exhaustive is that restoration? You know, how do we know that such things will not happen again? And it takes us back to just the issue of, you know, if you have an electronic register, you need to have a backup system so that electronic register, if there is anything to interfere with it, you have a fallback plan. And that is one of the things I hope we will be able to discuss today.
You know, as we discuss this, then there are all these matters that are emerging. They keep emerging. Numbers are bandied around, and they sort of now become like the official numbers, that like the 1.1 million, 1.2 million. I haven't heard Chebukati use the number 1.1 or 1.2 million. It's just talking about investigations that are being conducted internally and stuff like that. The 1.1, 1.2 is not an IEBC issued number, so we cannot even discuss that from our point of it being official. The issue, though, just like Saitaba is saying, Kipchumba, is the trust and of the integrity of the process and the register itself. From what we have seen so far, the IEBC opens a rapid registration exercise, formally suspends, invites an auditor to come and audit, receives a report, says, I have received a report and we are responding to the issues that have been raised by the auditor, comes out today and says, now we have the final and these are the issues and this is how we are addressing those issues. Does that not at least bring back some level of degree of confidence with the system?
I think, Latif, that is just a mere movement of the normal motions in terms of what should be done. That is fulfilling a statutory timeline. And I agree with Saitabao, when it comes to trust and integrity deficit, you do not cure it by just saying you have gone through the motions. Number one, you told us there was a breach in the register in terms of movement of voters. We need to go back again to the granular levels. The people who are moved, Eric Latif, Kipchumba Karori, Saitabao, and so, they have been taken back. Tell us these were the people who are moved, here they have gone back. That way, when we ask our people on the ground, we tell them confirm, and they tell us yes, it has happened. That is how we restore confidence. The second question about restoration of our confidence and integrity on the register, we need to ask is, who are these people? What was the extent of the breach? Because you cannot just win back our trust by doing the motions. Remember, this breach happened through the same motion, so we need to know at what level, because whatever happened was an integral breach in terms of data. And it goes to a data offense, on data protection. Are
you really saying, Kipchumba, that they should come out and say that voter so-and-so had been transferred?
We are saying just break it down the same way we have seen the report, the 6-page report. Break it down. Tell us, there are 10,000 people moved from Tarbo constituency to Kajiado Central. There are this amount, you see, so that it is easier to follow at that level. Because the danger is this. We come here, we say we have trust in the register. We come the 9th, those voters are not in the register. That is the first place you impeach the elections. Even before the voting has taken, before the voting day, the process has already been impeached because the register will not be verifiable. That is what we are saying. And what we want is that the credibility and verifiability of the register must be beyond reproach. That is what we want, regulative. And we do not want what I'll call the mechanical approach to the register. We want a holistic approach. We are not going for the 75% purity of the register. We want 100%. Because even that deficit of 0.1% affects the process.
Affects the entire process. Setabo, before you take the break, what do you say to that?
I can't agree with Kipchumba anymore. We are committed on the Azimio side. We are committed to ensuring that this election is perhaps one of the few elections in our country's history that will be beyond reproach. And our role, even as we, the role of candidates, and this is something that I want to also agree with Kipchumba about, the role of candidates, the role of their representatives, including agents, is to monitor the electoral process before, during, and indeed even after. Because even after voting, there is still the transmission process and all this, and the verification of results. So at this point in time, the issues we are raising, IEBC needs to take them seriously, and they need to address them. Because, IEBC, unfortunately, and I have to say this, this is a body that does not have a very good track record in the recent, if their track record is anything to go by. Because the last election was bungled, and it was annulled by the highest court of this land. So they already stand indicted by the Supreme Court that they failed to deliver a credible election. I want to assure Kenyans that this time round, we are on top of things to ensure that that election, nobody will complain that this election has been rigged. We will do everything beforehand. We don't want to complain after. We are going to complain before, that ABCD needs to be done so that we don't have to complain after. Nobody wants, on our side at least, we don't want to give the other side even one reason for them to say the election was not free and fair.
You're seeing me looking through my notes because I'm tracking back to why I had done the math. The number of elections that were conducted last time in 2017 was 1,882, and that's what's going to be conducted this year. One was nullified. The others were not. So when we say that the IEBC bungled an election, we've got to be fair as well to them here and say all the other 1,881 elections were not nullified, unless those ones that went to court on a petition.
Your figures are questionable because there are several constituencies by-elections were held.
That's what I'm talking about. Unless those were the by-elections were held,
yes.
and those are others. But let's discuss that after we take this quick break, all right? We're having a conversation about the IEBC. They have released the final register of the voters ahead of the August 9th general election. In the studio with me at the Roundtable Kivumbi 2022, representatives of the two main presidential campaigns. And from the Kenya Kwanza corner, Kipchumba Karori, advocate of the High Court, and also a lawyer from the Azimio corner is the chief agent for the Azimio presidential candidate, Saitabao Ole Kanchori. We'll be back shortly. Keep it right here.